You mentioned Mesa. Just for anybody watching, could you explain what that is out here in the lake? I know not everybody understands some of the the hills and the mesas and stuff like that.
So the Mesa is on the north line is like 2650. The outside edge of it's like 3950 on the west line. And it's kind of a flat plateau. It's like 150 feet. And the outside of it drops off to like 190 relatively quickly if you're trolling straight east. So if you want to find it, if you get to like straight out of North Point, you go to 200 foot of water, straight out, turn right, you'll scrape the outside of it.
Gotcha.
That's kind of an easy way to find it. So,
and you'll find Lakers will kind of stage in that Mesa
area?
area?
Sometimes you'll find them on the outside edge of it. Sometimes you'll find them on top of it. It always seems to hold some. This year, actually probably some of the best Mesa trout fishing I've seen. And we were catching limits of them very, very quickly in September this year, late August. Last year, that was the North Reef, which was the first time I'd ever seen that. The North Reef produced so good. And there could have been more trout on the North Reef this year than there was that we thought there was because nobody was really hitting it. But I remember a couple times I slid. If you slide to the southwest of the Mesa, you'll end up on the North Reef. And a few times we'd end up, just the angle we're on, we're catching fish, and you look up, you're kind of angled towards it, and we're still catching fish. So that could have been good too. There was also some silverfish around in September, that we weren't really targeting heavily. We operate, for the customers that want to catch lake trout, that's the time to come. So usually my groups are looking for lake trout in September and October. Yeah. So, we keep some silver gear out there in September, and we caught some. And I know that they were catching some on the hill in September. There was some good hill fishing in Wisconsin in September, which is not super, super common.
Yeah, I remember that because guys were coming in catching them like inside the hill, top of the hill. Somewhere from like 60 to 100 range. Yeah. For the juvenile, 2-3 year old stuff like that. When you're fishing on that Mesa, is it straight rigger fishing if you're doing lake trout, or what's kind of like your setup for that kind of fishing?
So if I'm fishing the Mesa, I'm usually, on the way out there, I'm putting a couple coppers out too because I just, angled towards silverfish too. And then I usually just run 2 riggers in the bottom. Usually they're both paddles. If trout fishing gets a little tougher, I'll switch one to a steel dodger. I do seem to, when on both those reefs, when the fishing gets tougher for me, my first go-to is take a paddle off and put a steel dodger out. And usually that will change some things for me.
Chrome or the trash can?
My first pick is the trash can, and then I'll go to chrome. Those are my top 2. Usually it's the trash can or smoke with a little yellow clown spinning with a little yellow tail on it. Yeah, that's usually a very, very productive bait for when they get a little more finicky. And then I'll run my wires. It all depends on like how good the fishing is.
Right.
Same with the South Reef. The South Reef, we only usually run a few rods. You want to turn hard. It's very rocky. It's very easy to lose equipment on the bottom. If it's finicky, I'll put out long wires. I'll put steel dodgers or paddles in my wires and run like a 12-foot leader off the dipsy. And that a lot of times will outperform riggers on days. You won't think it does because it takes so long to set them and so long to reel them in. Yeah. But usually once you're getting in where they're supposed to be, they're very, very good rods. But you're right. A lot of days we're running them 300 to 450 foot back. So it actually takes some time to set that if you don't want it to the dipsy to flip and get tangled with it or backlash the spool. So you got to and you're usually trolling slow because you're trout fishing. So it's very easy to screw them up on the way out or so you got to do it slow. So it takes some time to set a 400 wire and reel in a 400 wire. Even if you're an experienced fisherman, it takes time.
Are you? I know some guys can bottom bounce dipsies. Is that what you're doing, or are you just trying to get it to depth?
Not out there. Okay. On the South Reef, sometimes if you're on top of it, you'll scrape. You're in like 120 foot of water on top of the South Reef. You'll scrape sometimes. But the Mesa, I'm just dumping it, trying to get it down 150 to 200 feet down, depending where I'm at on the Mesa. Just get it down there. And a lot of times it does not down there very long. Like a lot of times, we'll only catch 2 or 3 fish on it, but it's, most of the time it's in somebody's hand being set or reeled in. And it really, those rods really just stink though, because if it gets hit and you lose it, it takes all that time. Yeah. They're actually really my least enjoyable rod we run on the boat.
Is that kind of like fishing being difficult? We got to deploy these situations? Yep. Okay.
So I actually stopped running my wires like, I don't know, the 3rd trip to the South Reef this year. I just put them downstairs in the cabin. You didn't need any extra trout help. I mean, it was so fast. It was so incredible. And then we went out one afternoon. We don't run a lot of afternoons in October. But we had an afternoon trip, and we went out and we got back out there, set our rods, and we made it all the way across the reef with one bite. I'm like, oh, go get the wires. And we put the wires out, and and I switched a couple things around on the downriggers, and then it took us like an hour and 20 minutes, and then we were done and we went home.